Bill Gaither reaches 90 years of age today, and that number carries a kind of gravity that only comes when a life has been poured so completely into a calling. It is not simply about the years themselves, but about what filled them, and in his case, more than 7 decades have been devoted to writing songs, shaping gospel music, and gathering voices that would go on to define an entire genre. Few people have built something as vast and enduring as what he created, and even fewer have done it with the consistency and influence that marked his journey. Yet for all the recognition, the awards, and the impact, what stands out most at this moment is not the size of his success, but the honesty with which he looks back on it when asked what he would change. And he does not point to missed opportunities in business or creative decisions he wishes he could revise. Instead, he speaks about something far more personal and far more universal, something that quietly sits beneath even the most celebrated lives. William James Gaither was born on March 28, 1936, in Alexandria, Indiana, into a world that gave no clear indication of what would come. There were no obvious advantages waiting for him, no built-in pathways to influence or recognition. What he did have was a foundation rooted deeply in faith and surrounded by music, and those two elements became inseparable in the way he experienced life. From an early age, he absorbed both, not as separate interests, but as a single thread that would guide everything he would later create. By the time he was in his early 20s, he was already writing songs that carried a different tone, something that felt less like performance and more like a personal conversation with God. Those early compositions began to set him apart, not because they were louder or more elaborate, but because they were honest in a way that people immediately recognized. His collaboration with his wife Gloria became one of the most influential partnerships in Christian music. Together, they wrote songs that would travel far beyond their small-town beginnings, reaching audiences they could not have imagined at the start. One of those songs, "He Touched Me," eventually found its way to Elvis Presley, a moment that could have defined an entire career on its own. For many, that would have been the peak, the achievement that marked a lifetime of work. But for Gaither, it was only part of a much longer and more complex story, one that would include both extraordinary success and deeply challenging seasons. In 1970, during a time marked by uncertainty and emotional strain, Gaither and his wife faced a period that would test them in ways they had not expected. A difficult pregnancy brought fear into their home, and alongside it came a stretch of depression that he has spoken about openly in later years. It was not a polished or triumphant chapter, but it was real, and out of that reality came one of the most enduring songs he would ever write, "Because He Lives." The power of that song did not come from confidence or clarity, but from a place of need, from a moment when hope felt fragile and uncertain. That authenticity is what allowed it to resonate so deeply with others. People sang it in hospital rooms, at funerals, and in quiet moments when they needed something to hold on to, and they believed it because it had been written from a place that understood fear firsthand. As the years moved forward, his influence expanded in ways that reshaped gospel music. The Gaither Homecoming series began as a simple idea, a gathering of friends and fellow artists, but it quickly grew into something much larger. It became a space where voices came together across generations, creating a sense of continuity and shared purpose within the genre. The names associated with those gatherings represent some of the most recognizable figures in gospel music, and the impact of those collaborations reached audiences around the world. Awards followed, including Grammys and Dove Awards, and even at an age when most people have long since stepped away from active work, Gaither continued to create. In 2026, at 90 years old, he received another Grammy nomination for Then Came the Morning, a song that reflects on resurrection and renewal after darkness. It is against the backdrop of such a remarkable legacy that his reflections carry their true weight. When he speaks about what he would do differently, the answer is not complicated, but it is not easy either. He talks about time, about the way it was spent, and the choices that shaped those years. There were seasons when the demands of his work took precedence over everything else, when schedules became overwhelming and the responsibilities he carried for others seemed impossible to set aside. In those moments, the work itself became the focus, and the balance he needed began to slip. He has acknowledged that there were times when he chose music over family, when the stage took priority over the dinner table, when the pressure to produce and provide overshadowed the quieter responsibilities of being present. What makes this admission so powerful is its simplicity. There is no attempt to soften it or reframe it into something more comfortable. He recognizes that in some of the most productive years of his career, he struggled to trust God fully with the outcome. Instead, he carried the weight himself, believing that everything depended on his effort and his ability to keep moving forward. That mindset led to periods of exhaustion and depletion, years where the pace of his life outstripped his ability to sustain it. And while those years produced significant accomplishments, they also came at a cost that he now sees clearly. The reason this resonates so strongly is because it is not unique to him. It reflects a pattern that many people recognize in their own lives, the tendency to prioritize work over relationships, to measure value by productivity rather than presence, to stay busy rather than allow space for rest. His message, especially at this stage of his life, is not complicated advice but a simple encouragement that carries the weight of experience. Slow down earlier, trust sooner, make room for rest before it becomes necessary. Choose the people around you with intention, not just when time allows, but as a priority that shapes how time is spent. And yet, his story does not end with regret. The central theme that runs through his music and his life is redemption, the belief that nothing is wasted, even the parts that seem misplaced or painful. The same struggles that brought him to write Because He Lives did not define him in a negative way. Instead, they became part of the foundation for some of his most meaningful work. The years that felt overwhelming and draining did not erase his calling or diminish his purpose. Instead, they contributed to a deeper understanding of grace, one that could only come through experience. Then Came the Morning captures this perspective in a way that reflects his understanding of time and faith. The focus of the song is not on the obvious moments of triumph or despair, but on the space in between, the quiet, uncertain period where nothing seems to be happening and hope feels distant. That in-between moment, often overlooked, becomes the center of the story. It represents the waiting, the questioning, and the uncertainty that people face when they do not yet see how things will resolve. Gaither has lived through enough of those moments to understand that they are not the end, even when they feel final. What he has learned over the course of 90 years is not just a comforting idea, but something he describes as a consistent reality. The morning comes, not always in the way people expect, and not always on the timeline they would choose, but it comes nonetheless. That truth has shaped the way he sees his own life, including the parts he would change. The regrets are real, but so is the restoration that follows them. The mistakes did not cancel out the meaning of his work, and the difficult seasons did not erase the good that came from them. As he reflects on his life, there is a balance in what he shares. He does not pretend everything was done perfectly, nor does he dismiss the significance of what has been accomplished. Instead, he holds both realities together, acknowledging where he would choose differently, while also recognizing that none of it has been without purpose. That perspective is what gives his story its depth, turning it from a simple account of success into something more honest and more relatable. At 90 years old, Bill Gaither stands as someone who has not only contributed to gospel music in a lasting way, but who has also taken the time to understand his own journey with clarity. His message is not built on perfection, but on reflection, on the willingness to look back and speak truthfully about what mattered most. And in doing so, he offers something that goes beyond music. A reminder that even the fullest lives can benefit from slowing down, trusting more deeply, and choosing what truly matters while there is still time to do so.